Hello. Thank you all for taking the time to view the presentation for my applied research project. Um, this project was challenging and rewarding, and something that I hope will help continue um, the work done by others and contributing to the body of knowledge on the delivery of athletic health care at the college level. My project is looking specifically at the delivery of athletic health care at the Division One football championship subdivision level, or the FCS level. Before I get into the project, I obviously want to thank my project advisors, Drs. Balvage McLeod and Dr. Welch Bacon, for their time and assistance in helping guide me through this project. Obviously, without those two, then I would not be this close to the completion of this project and my degree. So, thank you both. So, quick background on me personally and my own personal involvement with this project. I am not currently employed at the college level. I'm currently employed in professional athletics, but I spent the previous 12 years working at various levels of college athletics. Um, 2 years in graduate school at a FBS school, and then 3 years at a FCS school in my first full time job. Providing coverage for all sports. And that word is going to come back up in this presentation, the word coverage. Um, so in this picture of myself that's displayed, I'm a fresh-faced 26-year-old um, head athletic trainer at a small FCS school, um, sponsoring about 19 sports with 8 certified athletic trainers on staff. And when I use the term on staff here, I'm including both the 4 full-time employees and 4 graduate assistant athletic trainers. So um, I moved back after this job of working here as a head athletic trainer for 2 years to the FBS level. So I have significant experience in both the FCS and FBS levels of college athletics, and various models of athletic healthcare delivery at those levels. And that was the catalyst for the interest I had in this subject matter. How do uh, how is athletic healthcare administered at different levels, and can we do it better? It's kind of a catalyst for this project. So the introduction to this project, um, we talk about what makes college sports unique, and the unique demands on a college student athlete include both their student side with classes, tutors, study sessions, and things of the like, as well as the athlete side, which include practice, competition, strength and conditioning sessions, travel, as well as any sort of preventative or rehabilitative exercises required for the particular student athlete. So those things create a very unique scenario for college athletes, um, and the need for a very unique uh, model of healthcare to fit the needs of this unique patient population. So in the year 2000, there was a multidisciplinary group who got together to put together this appropriate medical coverage for intercollegiate athletics document, which is a document designed to take into account the demographics of an individual, organization, university, um, and determine through their algorithm what the appropriate number of athletic trainers for that specific school's needs would be. And obviously, there are significant differences between the FCS and FBS level in terms of sports sponsorship, um, in terms of competition and travel, but most importantly, and the thing I think impacts these differences the most would be the available resources and finances, and the fact that typically FBS institutions have a higher budget and more access to resources and finances than their FCS counterparts. So the study that I've undertaken or undertook as part of my ARP was in part looking to replicate pieces of a previously done study uh, looking at demographics of athletic healthcare organizations and observing those demographics, seeing how closely they resemble what the recommendations are, and also looking at um, if people are actually using this document that was created and designed to be used to help make staffing decisions and to help evaluate staffing at different levels. So the objective of my study was to assess staffing and employment characteristics of athletic healthcare at the Division I FCS level. This study also looked to identify usage of this AMCIA document in making staffing decisions, and a secondary purpose was to describe how schools are preparing to adapt to the changing landscape of athletic training and education. So, for this study, we attempted to identify head athletic trainers or other staff athletic trainers who were knowledgeable about the specifics of their athletic training department and would be able to answer demographic and descriptive questions about their department. The instrumentation was a cross-sectional survey designed and distributed electronically that would collect demographic information, staffing, and employment information on both the respondent as well as the entire department. Um, it, this this survey would also collect data on the use of the AMCIA document and also ask some open-ended questions as well as multiple choice questions to collect some data about the university's preparedness for the change in the professional degree level. For procedures, uh, the survey was distributed to identified athletic trainers from a list constructed by the research group. Um, the head athletic trainer for each university was identified, and if there was no a head athletic trainer who was able to be identified, then the most senior athletic trainer that we were able to identify was contacted via email. Um, the survey was sent out, and all participants were given 4 weeks to respond. The data analysis was done um, in a similar manner of the previously mentioned study that this project was modeled after. Uh, Demographic data was analyzed and uh, compared to determine averages and to be able to compare institutions to each other. Also, institutions' usage of the AMCIA document was viewed and evaluated, as well as institutions' use, or excuse me, preparedness for the changing landscape of athletic training and education. So, 125 athletic trainers were contacted, and 53 responded and completed the survey with a 42.4% response rate. As you can see, the demographic information listed below, there was an overwhelming majority of the respondents had completed master's degrees. They were BLC certified for, as you can see, an average of 20 years, around 20 years, and employed at their current positions for an average of around 11, almost 12 years. So the respondents, based on their demographic information, would be people who would have a good working knowledge of their athletic departments, as well as their athletic training departments and their athletic healthcare delivery systems. As listed here in this table, you can see the different titles and roles that these respondents carried in their positions, with almost 90% of the respondents having some sort of administrative duties, as well as their clinical duties as an athletic trainer. The universities represented by respondents were from 29 different states, as well as the District of Columbia, and were represented in 17 different athletic conferences in the NCAA. And here in this table, you can see the breakdown of the budget, which just goes through how much of each institution's budget goes towards the 5 identified subcategories in the survey. The average staff for the represented departments was about 6 full-time athletic trainers with a range of 0 to 14, which was important for me to note as well as an aside that there were respondents who reported that at the FCS, the Division I FCS level, there were no full-time, non-graduate assistant, non-intern athletic trainers employed by their university. There was almost an exact split between male and female staff athletic trainers. And again, for the purposes of this study, staff athletic trainers would include full-time employees and exclude graduate assistants as well as interns and other part-time athletic trainers. And the overwhelming majority of staff athletic trainers at the FCS level, represented by the responses, had completed a master's degree. In terms of the use of the AMCIA document, similar to previous research, only about half of the respondents reported using or previous use of this document in staffing decisions. And for those who use the document, the number one reason that they listed for using the document was to generate evidence for the need of increased staffing. And for those who did not use the document, the number one reason they felt the number one reason they did not use it is because they felt their efforts would be worthless, futile, because of lack of funding or lack of resources available in their job setting. In terms of the change in the professional degree level, the fact that the athletic training education track will now, or in the near future, be a master's degree track as opposed to bachelor's degree. 50% of the respondents reported that they use graduate assistants as primary healthcare providers for sports teams at their university. And those who did use GAs reported having an average of about 7 GAs per school, with a range of between 1 and 14. And for those who did indicate that they used graduate assistants, this table lists their responses to the question, how are you going to provide care if and when the graduate assistants are no longer available as a way to subsidize your athletic healthcare team. And as you can see, the majority of respondents were unsure as how they were going to change, and only a small percentage in relation to the entire number indicated that full-time athletic training hires were going to be their method of dealing with the change. So, uh, for the discussion, I think one of the most important findings from this study replicates previous studies, or that or is that the AMCI document is used uh, only about half of the time in making staffing decisions. As stated before, uh, the number one response for why respondents didn't use this document was lack of funding. And while budgetary concerns are always something that are in the forefront of discussions, I do think it's important to note that possible financial ramifications of inadequate medical coverage could likely exceed the cost of uh, providing additional athletic training or other medical personnel to provide care for student athletes and preventative care. Uh, there was also a number of respondents who indicated they did not understand the formula in the AMCIA document. And for those respondents, I think it's important to note that the NATA keeps a website wherein one can just plug in numbers uh, to describe their athletic department, and the calculations will be done automatically in a worksheet form that can then be saved, printed, and utilized. So basically, it takes out the majority of the legwork and provides an opportunity for those who may not understand the formula to still be able to use the document. Another interesting finding from this project was the definition of full-time equivalency, or FTE, was not accurately used across settings in the same manner. Um, and the interesting part of this finding was that the overwhelming majority of athletic trainers were asked to cover quote unquote sports as opposed to providing care. And by using the word cover, then typically that person's work schedule is at the behest of a head coach, as opposed to a typical medical model where healthcare providers will be there to provide care for patients as needed and as deemed necessary using sound evidence. In terms of the changes in the professional degree level, half of the respondents reported using graduate assistants, but only about 60% of those who use graduate assistants have actually investigated what they're going to do in the future uh, once the model of education for athletic training changes. As I mentioned before, few of those have indicated full-time staffing replacements to be their answer. Um, and one of the reasons that I hypothesize this is the case is that interns and residents are typically a cheaper option than hiring full-time employees. And we've already have seen from the data collected in this study that funding and finances are an enormous indicator on change and inhibit change oftentimes. So the fact that interns and residents are typically a cheaper option could be the reason why many organizations are leaning more towards replacing graduate assistant care with interns or residents. In terms of limitations for this study, obviously it's only generalizable for FCS schools because those were the only schools contacted and evaluated for the study. Um, in the future, I also think that we should look at the changes that are going to be made to the model of athletic health care delivery at the college level as the changes in the professional education of athletic training take place, just to see how those changes match up with the suggestions or the recommendations that many schools have put in place thus far. So, in conclusion, thank you again for viewing this project. I hope that it can be a help to our profession and help provide some evidence for schools to be able to begin enacting change. And in terms of this picture, I thought of no more better or fitting way to end any presentation than the most beautiful thing in this world, my daughter, who was born during the completion of this project. So thank you all again.